Ever try to memorize words, expressions, or entire sentences only to find that nothing sticks? Warum passiert das nur mir? Embarazado means embarrassed, right? Oh no. Est-ce que je viens vraiment de commander 2 salopes au lieu de 2 escalopes? If that has happened to you before, and I'm sure it has, don't worry about a thing, because today I'm here to help you fix all that with some practical strategies, or, as I like to call them, smart strategies. Allez, c'est parti. Take a vacation from memorization. Imagine trying to catch fish with a broken net. Words are like those pesky, floppy fishes, and your brain is the net. If your net has large holes, the words just slip through. I once tried memorizing 100 Russian verbs in a day, and my brain responded by saying, "Зачем ты меня мучаешь? Ты идиот." Honestly, this process was about as fun as trying to memorize a phone book, meaning it was not fun at all. And yet, that's what you, me, and everyone else tries to do all the damn time. To stick with the fish and net metaphor, trying to memorize words by brute force is like trying to catch those slippery fishes with your bare hands at worst, and with a broken net at best. You need to build a proper net first. But how? In September 1996, I started learning Deutsch. Guten Morgen, meine lieben Freunde. After a few horrible months using an old, dusty, and most importantly inefficient book, I found the D'Agostini German course. I devoured all 96 issues like they were episodes of my favorite TV show. And guess what? German words started popping up in my head. Nachts, morgens und sogar unter der Dusche. It's amazing what a bit of exposure can do. I could have tortured myself in memorizing Deutsch 100 words at a time, but I probably would have burned out and said, Tschüssi, auf Wiedersehen und halt die Ohren steif within weeks. This is not Star Wars, and it's not about the Force. So don't force language learning. Focus on getting a ton of language in you. The more exposure, the more reliable your net of vocabulary and phrases is going to become. Here are 3 things you can do right here and right now from the comforts of your couch to retain more of your target language. Switch your focus from memorization to acquisition. Think of it like eating your favorite dessert. Enjoy the process instead of forcing it down. Immerse yourself in the language by doing things you love, listening to great podcasts, watching cool movies, reading compelling books, etc. Make sure you consume at least 30 minutes of content each day. It's really like watering a plant. The more you do it, the faster it grows, and the more your language skills will show. Using, abusing, and ego bruising. Imagine this scenario. You've been putting in countless hours of studying your target language, reading a bunch of texts, listening to a bunch of podcasts, and watching a bunch of videos. It pays off because you're understanding more and more, growing excited with your progress. But then you jump into your first conversation with a native speaker, and everything falls apart. Your speech sounds like a brick being beaten by the blade of a blender. You stumble, you stutter, you mumble, you hesitate, and all of those super easy words you just learned a day ago, they've abandoned you like a father who looked you in the eye and said, "I'm just going to get some milk and cigarettes, son. I'll be right back," but never did come back. What the heck? All those hours spent learning Deutsch, Français, Ruski, Nihongo, and now this? Es super frustrante, no? But guess what? Why does this happen, and how can you fix it? As much as I harp on about massive input, many of us can become input abusers. We rely solely on input, feel good, feed our egos, and continue on with our day. Yet, this abuse leads to a lack of language use, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So, why don't more people just use their language freely? There's using, abusing, losing, and finally, ego bruising. Speaking language can be like a boxing match. For every word you get right or punch you throw, you might make a mistake or two in return, meaning you get hit right back. Thus, our egos become bruised by making so many mistakes, and it's not pleasant. No one likes being called out for their accent, improper conjugation, or lack of vocabulary. But guess what? It's a part of the process, and unless you can get hit and keep moving forward, you're going to throw in the towel. If I were to speak Turkish with you right here and right now, a language I've been learning only for a few months, I would feel embarrassed, confused, and reluctant, even humbled. Due to my level, I feel as if I'm not good enough, especially for a so-called language expert. You might think, wow, this guy is so lost. His ego must be all bruised up. But here's the thing, that's exactly how you learn. The learners who succeed are not necessarily the ones who know the most vocabulary or grammar. They're the ones who use the language, even when they make mistakes. When you communicate, you engage different parts of your brain. Suddenly, language learning is no longer just an academic exercise. It's about real life interaction. It involves emotions, gestures, eye contact, and cultural nuances. And you can only get that from using the language. So, how can you bridge the gap between study and use? Here are a few tips. Start speaking to yourself for 5 minutes a day. Talk about your day, your feelings, or whatever is relevant to you. Hire a friendly tutor. Don't hire the most accomplished or accredited tutor. Hire the one that makes you feel comfortable enough to speak a foreign language. Make live mistakes. Get out there and try to meet people who speak your target language. Get feedback from them and learn from your embarrassing mistakes, because that embarrassment does not last, but your newfound language confidence will. As Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You could think you're the most skilled at a language, but unless you get out there and use it, you are probably just waiting for some ego bruising. Smart review techniques. Che confusione, perché non hai ripassato, con un po' di impegno, tutto bene sarebbe andato. You've just seen how powerful exposure and use are for your vocabulary. What's the icing on the cake? Some smart review. While exposure and, of course, use is crucial, a little smart review can make things even better. When I was learning German, for example, I found myself listening to old recordings, jotting down key phrases, and, my personal favorite, using a Walkman. Remember those? If not, you're not in the cool club. My Walkman and I were inseparable, like Batman and Robin, but with more rewinding. I did not know it, but at the time, I was resorting to a technique called listen to review, which is one of the simplest and most effective ways to build passive and active vocabulary. You can boost your language skills by incorporating minimal, fun review activities. Re-listen to your favorite podcasts or show regularly. Write down keywords or phrases, and say them out loud. And yes, you can sneak in some anchor review if you're feeling extra motivated. Just don't overdo it. And voila, you are on your way to master the vocabulary of whatever language you want to learn. So, to wrap up, instead of trying to memorize words, expose yourself to massive amounts of language so that your brain can start digesting the language and building a net to catch words. Start actively using the language in real life and with natives to reinforce passive vocabulary and build active vocabulary through emotion and struggle. And last but not least, if you want the icing on the cake, engage in some smart, simple, and meaningful form of review that you can implement in the long term. If you'd like more cool content about language learning, check out my free ebook and audiobook called Avoid These Critical Mistakes to Get from Failure to Fluency. There is a lot of good stuff and advice in this ebook, and you will find some very bright language learning gems, whether you are a beginner, intermediate, or even advanced learner. And if you want to know more about some cool techniques to remember and use words like a pro, as well as skyrocket your language skills in general, check out all the courses and books we offer at the Smart Language Learning Academy. I've left all the links in the description box for your learning pleasure. And as always, thanks for watching and happy language learning.